And welcome to Into the Light with C Love, inspiring stories that shape your path to change, where we share powerful stories of resilience and transformation. I'm your host, Cassandra Love Lambert, also known as C Love, and I'm so excited to guide you on this journey today as we uncover stories of everyday heroines who have faced unimaginable challenges and turn their pain into power. This show is about creating a blueprint for your own life and for your own transformation through our guest stories. And today, I am so thrilled to welcome vocal activation coach and creative marketing consultant, Daisy Lopez. Daisy is the founder of the Liberated Latina, a brand that represents the underestimated woman's journey to reclaiming her voice, breaking cultural norms, and growing a global movement through irresistibly authentic marketing. I can't wait for you to hear her story. Don't let silence win. Own your voice and change the world. And thank you so much, Daisy, for being here and joining me on the show today.
Oh my gosh, are you kidding? This is so fun. It's such an honor to be here. And just for you, I broke out a couple of my little sparkles, but I'm nowhere near your game. I need you to drop the tutorial. I need you to drop something.
Yes,
But I
I can
figured,
totally do that. Yeah, and I'm so glad you put some sparkles on because that's what it's all about, right? Like liberating the voice, being seen, being heard. And I really enjoyed our conversation we had before where you were sharing some of your story and your struggles that you worked through to own your voice and show up and also help other women do the same thing. Can you share a little bit about your story, about where you started, and then kind of how you got to where you are now, where you're helping women really speak and own their power?
yeah, absolutely. So my story really starts going back to when I was a child. I always struggled with this tension of being so incredibly afraid of speaking up, of really letting my true expression be seen. So I was the girl that would sing into her hairbrush in her room, but was so embarrassed if anybody in my house could potentially walk in and see me in that expression or hear me singing in my room.
Mhm.
I was the girl in the class that was just the thought of raising my hand would send my heart into like full blown palpitations. The blood
Mhm.
would start rushing to my face, and ultimately silence won a lot as I was growing up because that fear of growing up, that fear of being seen growing up, it kept me silent for a long time. And a little bit of my background, I'm first generation Cuban American,
Mhm.
so my grandparents and my parents immigrated to Miami from Cuba. And there's literally a phrase in Spanish that translates to "you look prettier when you're quiet," and it's often told to little girls. So I
Yeah.
also had to come to terms as I was growing up with, wow, there's a reason why my body goes into full panic and anxiety and fear and fight or flight when I even think about any situation, big or small, of putting myself out there using my voice, especially if we talk about, having to enforce a boundary or say no. So I really just lost touch with that voice, right? We all have that inner voice
Mhm.
that is our truth, is actually our expression. But the more and more that we let silence win, the more and more that we grow afraid of that, we start losing touch with it. And that's ultimately where I found myself going into my 20s in a career that I hated, in a life that I didn't enjoy. My body was showing physical signs that I was not living in alignment. And that was kind of the catalyst to my journey back to try to reconnect with my voice and my expression and ultimately what I'm here to do.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. What really stood out to me and what you just shared was that phrase that your family would say to you or just people would say to you.
Yeah, culturally.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because in EFT tapping, there's something we call writings on the wall, and it's these limiting beliefs, right? And so, like, if it's like indoctrinated in you over and over and over again, it kind of becomes part of your identity, right?
Mm.
So how did you shift that for yourself? Like, what did you take, especially because you were feeling anxiety and all these things like the fear? And I know that those are powerful emotions that can really keep people stuck. So, how did you actually break through that or overcome that?
A lot of years. It was not an overnight thing. A lot of years and a lot of tears.
Mhm,
No, but
mhm,
honestly, I say this all the time and people kind of look at me like I'm cuckoo for cocoa puffs, but marketing and business actually saved me and saved
mhm,
my life because it wasn't until I started this endeavor to build something of my own. I always think that that was my first kind of turn inward to my own voice of saying, you know what, I know that this was the path that was set out for my brothers and I, as the American dream of success is to get the job with the corporate benefits and the retirement plan. And I did that. And it was that first decision to say, you know what, I'm going to make a different choice. I'm going to listen to what my inner voice is saying. And I left that job February 14th of 2020.
mhm,
Did not know what was coming after that, but I made that jump. And once I actually started looking at my options, I had a health coaching certification at that time. But once I started exploring what it could look like to start something of my own, I realized that that lifelong pattern of hiding, of letting silence win, was going to quickly just let my dream die. It was going to squeeze out everything of my dream. Because when you have a business, when you have a mission, when you have a story to share, when you want people that you want to meet, people that you want to help, if you don't have the voice to
mhm.
bring that into life, it doesn't get to do that, right? It doesn't get to reach the people and create the impact. And that was the first time that I had to come face to face with myself and that pattern and my identity of I'm just an introvert. I'm not the person that speaks
Mhm,
up. I held that as part of my identity, to your point, right?
mhm.
And I said, you know what? This is too important. I finally have something bigger than my own social construct to want to face this head on.
Yeah.
And that's ultimately where I found somatics. That I know you also love somatics, but
Oh, yeah, I'm glad you brought that, yeah, the somatic work, but also so yeah, that makes sense, like, the compelling why, like, there was something bigger than you that compelled you and pulled you over the hump of your fears, to move forward and to step out and be seen, and then, yes, somatics, tell us more about that and how you even found that, right? So you were in
Mhm.
this job that was killing you, right? Because it was totally out of alignment, and then
100%.
that's what caused you to make this choice about your business and look into a business. And then you had the why, like, "Oh my gosh, I wanna help people." But, "Oh my gosh, I have these fears and anxiety." So, yes, tell us how you made that jump. Like, what is somatic work and what helped you the most?
Yeah. So it was kind of a it was really fate, I think, because there was somebody that I was following even when I was in corporate. And she had made this switch from kind of like more influencer to CEO and business owner. So I would listen to her podcast when I was traveling for work. I was in consulting. So it was constant travel, plane rides, and all that. So while I was traveling, I would listen to her podcast and write notes in my notes app of, what business could be and tips and, all that stuff that we just love. When we're starting to open ourselves up to something new, we start just exploring.
Mhm,
So she, around the time that I was coming to terms with that, okay, I need to face this fear of marketing, fear of getting my voice out there. She came out with a program that was called, I think it was like the embodied leader or the evolved leader. I don't know. The title just spoke to me. And I was like, that is what I want to be.
mhm,
And as I looked at the curriculum, she was tying in breath work and she was tying in all of these different somatic tools. So that workshop, excuse me, that workshop, I actually met my future somatic mentor. She led us through a breath work,
mhm,
and it rocked me to my core. I was having memories resurface from childhood of times where I felt just so rejected, or times that I felt unsafe to use my voice, times that I used my voice and I was bullied or ridiculed or embarrassed. And my body was holding on to all of that. And that's where it kind of connected of, oh, I have forgotten about that mentally, but my body has been reacting to that ever since. And that's what's kept me in this prison of not letting silence win all the time. So that's where it really started. I had that profound experience, and I started working with my mentor in her year-long somatic mentorship. And I just dove all the way in because it was by far the most effective vehicle for change and transformation.
Yeah, I agree so much, and it kinda makes me think of the book, The Body Keeps the Score, right? Where
Yes. The
yeah,
textbook.
textbook, everybody needs to read this book, The Body
Yeah.
Keeps the Score. But yeah, it's also the difference between logically knowing something or thinking something, right? But actually embodying it, right? Because you were
Mhm.
able to tap into what your body is holding on to, which is really what was keeping you in the jail of not being able to break free of that, right?
Yeah.
Um, so as you're going through this like program and you're doing the somatic work and you're like working through these memories and these limitations, how did that influence what you were creating for others? Mm,
I can't even, and this is the cool thing about somatics, and I wonder if you would agree.
mm,
The thing with
mhm.
somatics is that whatever branch of somatic work you do, whether it's breath work or tapping or, whatever iteration of it you do, whatever works for you, right?
Mhm.
Um, the changes start happening without you consciously realizing it. You just show up differently.
Yeah.
And you could be in the same circumstance, let's say before and after your somatic process,
Mhm.
and you just show up different.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
And I wasn't forcing anything. I wasn't like, okay, today I need to go on stories and I need to be this big thing. I wasn't performing. And
Yeah.
that was when I found a new level of peace in my business, because I started to realize, oh, marketing can be a celebration of the real me that I've uncovered. And marketing is our opportunity as women to bypass the middleman, bypass the red tape, bypass all of these things. And we have these global platforms in our pockets, and we get to speak directly to the people that we want to help. So it
Mhm.
almost helped me show up differently so that I wasn't spending all my time spiraling and worrying about perfection or me getting ridiculed, me being judged, me saying like it just took out all of that mental chatter, and it allowed me to focus all of my life force and energy on how can I best serve someone today? How can I speak to them? How can I express this mission to them? How can I share my story today? And that just created such different results. I was noticing that people would say things like, wow, this post really hit me, or I really felt you.
Mm.
What have you been doing different? Because you're different. I just feel you differently. And that's the cool thing about somatics too, is that it's, everything is energy, we know that, right? But
Mhm.
and when you start showing up differently, you start seeing your 3D world change right before your eyes, and it's like, I'm not even consciously struggling to do those changes. It just happens as an extension of who you're being.
Ugh, you're giving me goosebumps because I love that you brought this part up because it's really the difference too of like the personal development world tends to be very like force and efforting or like the mindset stuff, like it's like
Mhm.
forcing your cognitions to change. Whereas somatic work, because you're really addressing what's going on in the body and it's processing and releasing, there's no force. You're just shifting naturally because it's bottom up processing, right? And
Mm.
the way you described it was so perfect because I always explain it that way too. It's like you're all of a sudden in this like new reality and it's like, oh, this is different. And there is this part of like, oh, it's just going to come back, but then when it doesn't, right? Because it actually has transformed, you're like, oh, this is my new like my new plateau, my new um baseline, right? And then you keep
Mhm.
creating. It's also to me the secret of manifestation or creation, right? Cuz like
Yes.
you get into such an alignment, right? That whatever it is you're wanting to create comes forward effortlessly, right? And then
Mhm.
help women with, correct? Like in your program, you bring in somatics, you bring in like vocal exercises. Tell us a little bit about how you actually help women in this area.
Yeah. So essentially, to share a little bit of context, right? Because when I was going through that whole transformation myself with somatics, I was working strictly helping women strategically when in their business and in their marketing and in their content. That's always kind of been my jam.
Yeah.
Um, but then I was going through this whole paradigm identity shift behind the closed doors, and I was just like, I can't not bring this forward, because it would be out of integrity for me to say this is all that you need to succeed in your business and your marketing, when that's not true, because that's not true for me. That was not the only thing that made me successful. And so I started to have to come to terms with, okay, what does it look like to still do marketing, because I do love it and I do love the strategy and the creative direction, and I love all of that. But then I'm also going to be doing this thing over here. Like, what does that look like? And will people get it? But what I found was, and this is so true for all of us that are bringing forth truly innovative works, and we're tying in all of these different things into our own kind of style or way of serving the world. You have that moment, right? Of, will people get it? This is so weird. Does this make sense? But
Yeah.
what I found was, it was actually such a relief for so many people, because first of all, I was like, oh, wait, I'm not crazy that I keep searching and searching and searching for the next best template, content calendar thing to make my marketing work, when I know that there's something internally that's blocking me. So it's like, okay, I'm not crazy. Other people are experiencing this too.
Yeah.
And then the second thing was, where this work answers a very critical question that I struggled with for so long, which is, okay, everyone's talking about be authentic. And it's kind of become this Pinterest, you
It's like a
know,
hype word.
yeah, yeah, like a cute little graphic you put on your vision board, like be authentic, be yourself. And everyone was saying that in marketing, just be authentic and people will come. But then I always left the podcast interview. I always left the or the podcast episode or the workshop or whatever, being like, what does that mean for somebody that has lived their whole life not knowing what that is? I didn't have that encounter with that. So I started bringing that in, and I created vocal activation technique, which is essentially a somatic process. Think of it as like an active meditation where we use the somatic ingredients of breath, sound, and movement. And I guide you through this process where it allows you to have that visceral encounter, that visceral reconnection with what your actual voice and expression really is. And through the process of somatics, it also helps you come to terms with, oh, wait, that clenching in my stomach that I always feel when I want to speak, that's tied to this memory.
Mhm.
Or when my voice clenches up when I go to speak to somebody and have a hard conversation, or when I go on live, that's actually tied to this thing, this memory, this experience, this emotion. And breath, sound, and movement are all the ingredients that you need to release that. So
Mhm.
what I was finding was that the more that I was bringing that in and leading women through that, it was like, oh my gosh, I have a whole new level of access to my voice, to my expression. I'm ready to get this work out there. Like, let's go. So then
Mhm.
it actually made marketing easier for us to strategize, to get them on stage, to get their work onto a global stage, which is really the end result that I help women with. But we can't do that unless we have access to our voice and expression, or else marketing just becomes noise.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, that's so you actually speak to, that you're helping women get out of what I call hydraulics,
Oh my
where
gosh, I love that.
they have their foot on their gas really, really hard. They're pumping the gas. They're wanting to move forward. They're trying all the things, all the techniques, all the like
Yes.
strategies, but they're stuck in the same place because they got a foot on the brake. So they're like not going anywhere, right? So essentially you help them take that foot off the brake so they can actually move forward, right?
Correct. I
Yeah.
love that hydraulics.
That
That's
hydraulic.
so
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah, and it's really, right, like getting into alignment, right? All the things under the surface, like the subconscious that block us and keep us stuck. Um,
Mhm.
would you like to share, like, let's just say someone's watching, they're like, "Oh yeah, that's me. Yeah. I keep trying all these strategies. I work with this coach and that coach and that coach. I keep, changing up what I'm doing. But I'm still stuck in the same place. And yeah, if I'm really honest, I don't like being on video. I don't like talking. So yeah, what would you tell this person as a first step? Like what could they
Mhm. The first thing that I always like to challenge clients on, because they'll come to me after they've tried everything, right? They're in that spot and then they say, but I don't like this, or I don't like Instagram, or I don't like this. And I say, that's totally cool. Number one, marketing can be whatever plays to your strengths and whatever you want it to be. There is such a world of possibility with how fun and creative we can get with marketing. It's not even funny. Like, it doesn't even have to be all about Instagram or all about one platform. However, what I always challenge them with is that true, or is that actually a defense?
Mhm.
Because you feel like, maybe you're not extroverted enough to do well on Instagram, but deep down you kind of would love to have an intimate community on Instagram that's engaged, that looks out for your posts every day, that comments, that supports each other in the comments, right? Maybe deep down you do want that, but the I don't want this, or I'm not good at that, or I'm not down for that could also be a defense.
Mhm.
So that's always the first thing, is like, okay, we can do whatever you want, but let's challenge all of the identities or the I don'ts or I won'ts that we're
Mhm.
connected to, because that could ultimately be a block to you bringing a type of brand that you actually want to see in the world. And then the next thing I would say is, I was going to skip to something I'm going to mention at the end, but try to start connecting to that inner voice.
Mhm.
Try to start listening to that little voice in some people feel it in their heads, and people feel it in their gut, people feel it in their chest, like that true voice that you often hear, but you're like, yeah, but people want me to do this, so I have to do this. Or, hey, go this way. And you're like, actually, I'm going to do this. Or say this. And you're like,
Yeah,
no, that's weird, I'm going to do this.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
like tuition, yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And start just getting to know it before you put pressure on putting it on blast for the world, right?
Yeah.
Just start reconnecting it like you would a friend that maybe you lost contact with, and you still love them, you still care about them, but you just haven't spoken to them in a while. So
Mhm.
I'll tell clients to keep a journal, and without judgment, right? If you are in those situations where you wanted to do this, or you wanted to say it like this, you wanted to have this conversation, and either silence one, or you kind of molded yourself to be something else, write about it.
Yeah.
You didn't fail, you didn't go wrong, we're not broken, it's fine. But it's just useful to get accustomed to, what is this pattern? Because that's what you'll ultimately see, is that it's some sort of pattern, it's some sort of habit. And once you start bringing that to your awareness, number one, you're going to be able to better connect with your inner voice. I call it our leading voice. And
Mhm.
number two, you're going to start creating some separation from who you think you are, the people pleaser, the perfectionist, the whatever, versus, oh no, this is just something that I do. It's a defense. It's something that just comes up, and then we can work with it from that vantage point.
Yeah, so I just wanna, like, back up to, like, go over this a little bit. So you're saying a first step for someone to do is just, like, what I also refer to as, like, all the rebuttals. So, like, yeah, I wanna do,
Yes.
right?
I love
So it's
that.
like all the internal rebuttals, all the, like, voices in your head saying, no, you can't do that," or "Who do you think you are?" Or even the limiting beliefs like, "Oh, yeah, I'm not a speaker," or "I'm not this," or I don't matter," right? Like, you get a list of all those rebuttals, right? Just get it out
Hmm.
on the table. And then you're saying the next step, is really, like, connecting with that inner voice, your intuition, and, you're saying journal it down so you can start to get into
Hmm.
what is another way, because like, everybody's different, right? So what's another way someone can get in touch with that inner voice? Like, do you have other ways of, because, everyone's a little different. I know my way.
Yes.
My way was definitely meditation, and a very specific
Mm.
meditation that helped me really kinda tune out the world so that I could feel my own essence. So yeah, tell me another idea that you give people to help them tune in.
Meditation is so powerful.
Mhm.
What I find though with people that are like clients, people in my community, is that meditation is really hard for them.
Mhm, yeah, it can
um,
be. Mhm,
they can come back to it. They often do after a little bit, but when they're in that position where they're really frustrated or maybe feeling even a little bit defeated
mhm.
or avoidant, like they
Yeah,
know something's there, but they're like, oh,
yeah.
meditation is really intense for them. Um, and so another thing that I've recommended, I actually use this for myself, is
Mhm,
voice memos, recording yourself talking.
mhm, mhm,
So for example, if you want to, I'll go like entrepreneur route and then non-entrepreneur route. So if you're an entrepreneur and you want to share some sort of message to your community, you want to do a post or whatever, voice memo yourself sharing that as if you were speaking to, I don't know, whoever you feel most comfortable with in this world, whoever you feel most accepted by,
mhm.
and voice memo yourself, and then voice memo yourself as you would if you were showing up online and you have to put that mask on. And usually my clients will add like a name to that mask, like the good girl, the goody two shoes, or whatever your like mask is, and then record yourself through that and notice the difference.
That's cool exercise, I like that. Yeah, yeah.
And then from there you can kind of decide, I always tell my clients, like, you decide what you do next. I'm not here to say that, you have to do it one way or the other, or show up as one way or the other, or you have to completely throw off that mask, because that can be really intense too. You just lived with this
Mhm,
for, you know, decades. But it's just interesting to know how you kind of come in and out of that identity.
mhm.
And then you get to know what it starts to feel like when you're expressing yourself as just who you
Yeah.
are, who you actually are.
Yeah, I love that exercise. That's actually really powerful for someone to record both ways and maybe even talking to the person and recording it that they feel safe with and then go
Oh,
do
yeah.
right? Yeah,
Yeah.
'cause then I don't know, I'm with my acting background, right? Like, I'm like, something about actually focusing on someone else and just chit-chatting, will help them really be in the moment of it, and then, they could go pretend to do it on the platform and see the difference. That would be so cool.
That's cool. Yeah.
Okay. Add it to your thing.
I love that.
What would your 3rd step be, for people? Because I always like people to have 3 things on the show that they can actually go implement, because that's the point, right? Like, we want you to really implement these things. It's one thing to just hear things, but, like, we actually want you to take that step, right? So what would
Mhm.
you say the 3rd step is for anyone listening?
I would really recommend trying vocal activation. I am going to gift everyone that's here a free 10-minute version. And I
Yay.
call this like a vocal activation warm up, right? The full vocal activation sessions that I do in my membership, which is kind of like the house of this work, is 30 to 50 minutes, right?
Mhm,
But this 10-minute version that you can start with today is perfect for getting to turn inward and starting to get a feel for what does it actually feel like viscerally to reconnect with my voice and expression, and then
mhm,
act from that place. So
mhm,
this is perfect before you do live streams, before you have a hard conversation, before you have that important meeting at work that you're going to have to present something, or maybe you're going to have to voice an opinion.
mhm,
Anytime you want that reconnection with your voice, with your expression, you want to really show up and fill a room. This
mhm.
10-minute exercise is so powerful. I use it myself. I mean, I created it because I was like, I'm doing this.
We
I'm
want
doing this
your
myself.
secret sauce. We want your secret sauce that you use. Yes, Daisy. Thank you.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I still refer, even clients to it. I'm like, dude, use the 10-minute vocal activation warm up and then step into that and then tell me how you feel. It
Mhm.
just changes your whole essence, your whole being, your whole presence
Yeah.
before you go in and do that thing. So you all can definitely check that out and let me know how it goes. Let us know how it goes. You can tag us on social media after you try it, maybe take a little selfie and let us know how you feel.
Yeah, I'm so glad you brought this up to the vocal things, because like in acting class, we also had to like focus on like our body movement and like vocal exercises. Would you mind walking us through a few vocal exercises now together?
Yeah.
Give us a taste of it. Yeah, let's do
Yeah,
it.
we can do 2 things.
Okay,
So
cool.
the first one we can do is this is super simple, but it starts getting you back into like visceral connection with the vibrations of your voice.
Hmm.
Slightly meditative, but you're still doing something. So what you're going to do is you're going to take a deep breath in through your nose. And on the exhale, you're going to hum with your lips closed. We're going to do that one more time. You can close your eyes or keep them open. Deep breath in through the nose. And a closed mouth. Bringing your hands to the base of your throat. Let's do that one last time. Deep breath in through the nose. And closed mouth. Feeling the vibrations under your fingertips. And notice that as you do this, you can do this as many times as you need. It starts reconnecting you with that energy, because notice that our voice, right, is that vibration. Vibration is energy.
Mm-hmm.
And when we can learn to really connect with that and hone that, then we can shift energy within us. We can shift energy in a room. We can shift energy even through these platforms.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I
So
feel different after doing that actually. And you bring up such a good point of like our voice is our medicine and we are an instrument and our
yes,
voice rings through our system. And
yes.
humming, because we also use it in EFT tapping for trauma, like releasing
Mm-hmm.
trauma in the
Yep.
gamut sequence. It kicks on the vagus nerve. So it creates relaxation in the body. So I
Yes.
love this. Yes, tell us more. Tell us more. That was I already feel like more clear in my head immediately. Like humming is so good for self-soothing, 100%.
Yes. That one is like my back pocket thing. I do it multiple times a day if I need to. It's meditative, it's recentering, all of it. The next one is a little bit more if you need to really get activated, if you're about to speak, if you're about to step into a meeting, or if you really want to bring that presence. I call this the be big posture. And it just
Say it
helps
again.
you
It's the be big or be
be
big?
big posture.
Be big posture. Okay, got
So
it.
often we'll do this during vocal activations. It's one of the different like postures or things that we do in that activation. All you do, if you want to stand, you can actually stand, or you can stay seated. Just make sure that your feet have contact with the ground.
With the ground. Okay, yeah, I'm not touching the ground. Let me fix that.
I wasn't either.
Yeah.
You're gonna have contact with the ground and rolling your shoulders back, making sure that chest is nice and proud, making sure that your head isn't too far up or too far down. You're just like a nice neutral look. And then on your next inhale in, you are going to bring your arms up almost like in a Y position. And I want you to extend your fingertips and try to fill the room almost like you want to touch every corner of the room. And notice what you feel. For many people, this might be uncomfortable if you're used to kind of
It's making me yawn.
if you're used to kind of like hiding or not being noticed. This is really confronting for some people.
Yeah, taking up
Really,
space.
yeah.
Mhm.
And then you can start to either move with it, you can start swaying, you can start bringing your arms, don't drop them, but you could just start bringing your arms back, bringing your arms front. And really, the intention of this is for your body to be the physical representation of you filling up a space.
Mhm. Yeah, taking up the bigness of the space. I
Yeah.
felt like the humming really activated my vagus nerve because I keep yawning. So
Yeah.
very
These
powerful.
are two extremes. These are kind of two extremes, right? It depends on what you need. If you need to be like really activating, to be on, you need to be in it, you do the second one. The first one is if you really need to come back and center yourself.
Mm.
So those are two little tips and tricks. These are kind of like voiced through the body, but keep them in your back pocket and whip them out whenever you need them. In addition to trying the vocal activation warm up, because it kind of brings everything together.
Yeah, I love that. I'm all yawning. I'm getting releases already. So that's so good. And that's actually the power of somatic work is like releasing things out of your body. Um,
Mhm.
and it could just be static. Like, we don't everyone doesn't wake up bushy-eyed, tail ready for the day, right? So doing some right. I know I don't wake up like that every day. But these are ways to tap into that, being more bushy-eyed tail, and enthusiastic for the day. I wanted to touch upon like this thing about like silence, right? Or being
Mhm.
small as a woman or like a little girl, right? Um, and having all that anxiety, right?
Yeah.
How did you cope back then? Was there anyone who really supported you? Like, was your mom or like a parent super helpful or a friend? Like, how did you get through that?
Um, yeah, my mom, I always get emotional when I talk about my mom.
Oh, yes, please share. Yes, tell us about your mom. How did she help you?
I actually think she's here. I think she's watching.
Yes,
She's number one fan.
she did. She did. Hi,
Yeah,
mom.
my mom. Um, yeah, she always just oh my gosh, I'm sorry. This is always like
No,
it's
that's about
anytime
to
I talk about
say.
my mom, oh my sparkle came off. Oh no.
Your
Um,
brain sparkles. It's great. It's great. It's perfect.
unicorn moment.
Yes.
Um, yeah, my mom always really supported us and always saw the best in me. And yeah,
Aw.
I always felt like there wasn't anything I couldn't bring to her. Um,
Mhm.
and I think that always was like uh my North Star,
Aw.
knowing that I always had somebody that would support me and would see the best in me. Oh my gosh. I am like
Oh my god, you're making me start to tear up. This is so precious. This is what any mom wants for their daughter and their kids, right? For them to feel that love. So that's actually thank you for sharing that with us because not all of us had those amazing moms, like, and that's what I strive to be for my daughter. So I could feel the love between you guys by you just
Mhm.
sharing that. What did she do? Did she just like validate your feelings or give you hugs, encouragement? Like, what were like the special key things she did to help you?
Yeah.
Mhm,
She was just always available.
mhm,
And I know that that sounds general, but I think as especially as a little kid, our nervous systems are picking up on who's available, who's open,
mhm, yep,
and who kind of sees us as like the annoying kid or is just emotionally cut off. Maybe they don't have the tools to be able to develop deep emotional connections, which I definitely felt like that was a gap in other areas of my family.
yeah,
And she was just always available. I never felt like I was a bother or a burden to her. And I just felt like she saw me clearly.
uh-huh,
It wasn't always about um, achieving. It
mhm,
was like, wow, you're so smart, or you're so kind, you're so generous, you're so this, you're so that. And I
mhm,
just always felt very seen and supported by her. In addition to, there was nothing that I could bring to her where I ever felt like she would uh, reject me.
mhm,
And that became like a somatic North Star to at least be able to know what that can feel like.
mhm. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for sharing this. Because one, if moms are listening or even dads, right? Like, oh, this is how to really be supportive of my own kid, right? Like, this is how I can raise an emotionally secure child, right? by doing these things, being emotionally available, encouraging, being the safe space for them to come to, right? So thank you for sharing that. And also, like, I find that in parts work, like if you've ever done parts work,
Mhm.
we end up doing this for ourselves too, right? Like holding space for all of our parts and all of the feelings. And all they really want to be is seen and heard and validated. And then they're like, oh, I feel so much better, right?
Mhm.
It's a very beautiful thing. And you're so lucky to have your mama. Um, I had
Yeah.
that with my God family. And so like when I do healing work on certain parts of my life, there's something we do that's like matrix re-imprinting, and I rescue
Ooh.
my little one from the nightmare place it was in, and I always end up placing her with my God family because that was my safe place where I felt loved and seen, and so then it brings so much healing, and then that part's not stuck in the like nightmare it was in for all these years. So I love that
Yeah.
you your mama, you just stick yourself with your mama and everything will be okay.
Yeah.
Your mom is commenting. She said she told you to always follow your heart and never have regrets. And she said she always told you how unique you were and how much she loved you, I think it says.
Yeah,
It,
love just as she is.
yeah, that's so sweet. Thank you for being here, Mama, and thank you for doing such a great job with Daisy. And now you get to be this type of mama bear for your clients and holding safe space for them, right? Could
Yeah.
you share an amazing journey you took a client through? Like, this is how they came to me, like, this is what they were struggling with, and then paint the picture of like where they got to through working with you one on one.
Oh gosh. Which I'll go
Yeah.
with
Which
there's a
one?
couple of different like there's a couple of different ones, and this is not, to be clear, it's not a testament to my powers. It's all credit goes to them.
For sure.
Um
Yes. Yes, I love that
uh
distinction too, because they're actually doing the work, right?
they're actually doing the work and implementing, and also raising their hands to do this work is, as you know, right, when we hold such deep things. I mean, yes, it's marketing, but
Mhm.
what we do in that space with the vocal activation, and it's a lot of deep work, and oftentimes it's things that they didn't even think they would have to face.
Mhm.
But one of my clients, we worked together for a little bit over a year. When she first came to me, she was still in her corporate job. I mean, absolutely killing it. She was, I mean, at the top of her game in her career, in the corporate space, and she wanted to start her own coaching and consulting business for Latinas
Mhm.
to try to combat the staggering statistics that show that Latinas and women of color are just not represented at the C-suite level. So
Mhm.
her brand was all about elevating them and supporting them with the proper support, career advice, consulting to be able to get in those spaces to create real change from the top down.
Mhm.
So she came to me with the idea, and she was like, I don't like Instagram. I bought an Instagram course. I don't get it. I don't like marketing. I wish I didn't have to market. And I'm like, well, we have a problem because you have a pretty great mission and I want you to talk about it. So we have a little bit of a problem here.
Let's go
Um,
together.
yeah.
Yeah.
So we worked together one on one for a little bit over a year. And during that time, she went from being in her corporate job to then leaving, having her first six-figure year in her own business,
Nice.
media, TV, local radio, and just getting into these rooms with these incredible C-suite level executives of Nike and just all of these major brands, that she was able to step in and advocate for more representation at those levels. And I love that story mostly because it shows that when we can not just take marketing for the sake of posting consistently, but when we actually approach marketing from the lens of creating global change, of changing industries, right? Changing entire societal norms and paradigms, then it becomes less about how perfect can we be or how perfect can this graphic be, right? And we start stepping up as actual mouthpieces of global movements,
Yeah.
and we're able to kind of step over ourselves and share a bigger message that gets to create that bigger level of change. So I love that story, to think about a world where more Latinas and women of color are at that level. It's exciting, and it's actually happening. The change is happening.
Yeah, I love that. Speaking of that, like I've always like I grew up in California, Bay Area. It was like everything, like all the cultures are there. Like I went to school with everybody from everyone, all the different cultures. And one of my favorite things too was like the Barbies of the world, like because I really loved like the different
Yeah.
ethnicities and the dresses and the cultures. And I couldn't imagine not having that or not having that in the world, right? Because we learn so much from each other and we influence and inspire each other so much. So I love inclusivity. It's a hard word for me to say. And I also love, I love just differences because it's beautiful, right? What kind of women are your favorite to work with, or how would a woman know it's time for her to work with you?
Mm.
Yeah, so they
The
can be like,
main
"Oh, yeah,
thread,
that's me. I need to reach out to Daisy," you know?
yeah,
Yeah.
the real main thread with all of my most like just cherished clients and the best fit is really, if you know you're so good at what you do, you know that you have, or you just know that you have a story, you have a message that's meant to be reaching more people than what it's reaching right now. And you just feel like the marketing that you're taught doesn't fully capture the depth of work that you have. And therefore, it's going unseen, unnoticed, undervalued. That's where we have to work together.
Mhm.
Because I always tell my clients, or on my podcast, I always say there's a very different way of marketing versus trying to grow a follower count versus trying to grow a global movement. You
Mhm.
speak different, you
Yep.
approach it differently, your strategies are different, your collaborations are different. And that's really my favorite person to work with, the one that's like, I know my stuff, or I have a strong story, I stand behind my message, I'm ready to start seeing this create change. And I know that the way to do that is for me to be the most empowered mouthpiece for this mission, and to also have marketing that can touch thousands of lives and thousands of people on a daily basis.
Yeah, I love that 'cause it's one thing like, sometimes marketing doesn't capture that depth, right? And it is, like, a block for a lot of people just because they don't know, and so it sounds like that's, like, your niche, like, you love helping with that piece, which is really beautiful, right? I actually also love how you have both the, like, strategy masculine side that you bring to the table with strategy and, like, how to do that, but then you also bring in the somatic work and the femininity and the spirituality and just working through those pieces. You brought up your podcast. Can you share with everyone how they find your podcast and what your podcast really shares?
Oh, sure. So my podcast is the Liberated Latina podcast.
Mhm.
And that podcast is really a space where we talk about all things related to growing a global movement, all things related to what that real journey is of activating your voice, the challenges to it, the highs of it. We talk about how do we relate with, social media as people that may or may not have had the most positive experiences with it, and really how to make marketing your own so that you can really play to your strengths and be able to, ultimately the goal of all of this is to impact more lives, right? To get our work, our story, our message into the hands of more people. So I offer the strategy of it, or little things that you can implement. I offer I guess the more mindset energetics of vocal activation, and we just have a good time. It's
Mhm.
always just like a hangout sesh while we get down to business.
Is your podcast just you talking, or do you bring in other experts to talk with you?
Both. Yeah,
Both? Yeah.
I love, we should actually do a podcast all the
Oh, yeah, that'd be so fun. Yeah.
yeah, I love having people come in from all different niches to support us, whether it's health or finances or messaging or copy or whatever it is. And then I also love my solo cast, where it gets to be just us.
Yeah, what also came up too is because I know that you like working with women, and helping them get on the global stages and really step into their mission and their power. How do you work with them? Do you do group trainings, or do you do one-on-one, like hand holding?
So I do a little mixture of both. I have a private coaching. It's more like coaching and consulting because I also bring in my admin team and we help kind of offload some of the tasks
Mhm.
involved in, getting on these stages or just the strategy and the all the process to get in front of, these bigger audiences.
Mhm.
So I have that program that is that mix of coaching, consulting. Vocal activation is always involved in it, and it's often the first step of, okay, what is going to get in the way of you absolutely filling the rooms that you're about to
So
walk
smart.
into?
Yeah, that's so smart that you address that first, because you're like, we don't even want to get into this part until we make
Right,
sure you're like aligned for it. Yeah, that's
right.
mhm.
So we do that, and then we go into, okay, how do we want to get this in front of more people? Do you want to go on a podcast tour? Do you want to do some really out of the box, innovative collaborations? Do we want to absolutely blow the lid off your social medias? A mixture of two of them or three of them, whatever, right? We start crafting that strategy of what is it going to look like, and what are the best audiences and platforms to get your unique story into more people, to the lives of more people. And then I also have a membership, which is such a freaking joy. It is the house of vocal activation in the sense of that's really where I do the monthly activations with different intentions, and it's a community space. There's networking and also marketing skill building is what I call it. I don't tell you what to do. I give you the tools so that you can be your own savvy marketing strategist and be able to navigate how to grow your own brand in your own way. That was always really important to me, is to not create clones of my business and my brand, but to teach people, how do you create an absolute bananas marketing strategy on your own? How do you change it when things ultimately shift and change? If this platform goes out, if that algorithm changes, how do you always stay on top? Because if,
Mhm.
ultimately we're in this for the most impact as possible. So I want you to have the tools in your hands to be able to do that.
Yeah, so you get them to be self-reliant in that way and
Mhm.
how to fish. Like, you're not just handing them the fish. You teach them how.
Exactly.
Um, I know this is a silly question, but I have to ask, because you're all about empowering women of color and Latinas and everything. If there is a woman who is not Latina or a woman of color, can she also come to you too?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So, like, someone's like, "Oh, dang, I'm not that. Can I go to her?" Okay, cool.
Mhm.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
everybody can come to Daisy. It does not matter. She just loves helping, but she has a soft spot for women of color, and as we need to bring that for more equality, right? Because of the way the world has been, right? Um,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. What is your thoughts around that? Like, just supporting Latinas and women of color and just being a part of that, creating more equality piece.
Yeah, I think it ultimately comes down to having just more spaces where we can talk about our unique experiences and not feeling like we're getting the eye roll or like we're playing victim.
Mhm.
And that's actually something that I've always really stood against is I've always told people I am not a victim, but I do have a unique experience and a unique take on things. And there have been times where I just haven't had the same access or history to be. I felt it really when I went away to college for the first time, where everyone was like, oh, my great grandfather came here. I'm like, this was huge for me to leave for college. Like, I'm the first woman in my family ever to do this, and you just feel the differences, right? But I think it's ultimately important, and the reason why I decided to go with the brand name of the Liberated Latina was so that there could be a space where we don't shy away from that conversation, where I want us to all be able to share that experience. And ultimately, the journey of turning back inwards as women and owning our voices, I know is not singular to a certain group of women, but I do think that there is a certain different experience that's shared amongst, let's say, first generation Americans or daughters of immigrants, women of color. There are certain different nuances, and I just wanted a space where we could talk about that openly.
Yeah, I love that because it's true. Like your life experience would be different than mine, would be different than the next person. And I also remember the story you shared about like how was it your grandmother who came here and she was like an entrepreneur?
Yeah.
Can you share that amazing story, please? Because it was so endearing and so precious.
Yeah, my mom can probably share more context too in the comments, but she essentially came. My mom and my aunt were very, very little, still babies really.
Mhm.
And she just had to make it work. So she started selling Christmas cards in July
Mhm.
as her first little, trying to
Yeah,
get
and
some
she's in
cash
Florida,
in.
right? Was she in Florida when
Yeah,
she
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
In
for
Miami.
Christmas cards in July, yeah.
Yeah, and she would stick my mom and my aunt in the back of the car and just go sell Christmas cards in July. And she actually went on to have incredible success in many different businesses. She started Daisy's Landscaping. I'm named after her.
That's so cute.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, she started her own landscaping company. It was very successful. She did real estate. She designed kitchen cabinets. She had her own clothing line at one point, and I mean, she was so entrepreneurial. Um, I'd like to think I have a little bit of that from her, but
Sure.
she
I
was
was
just
gonna
brilliant.
say, like, it went in the bloodline when it came to you for sure. So how can people find you, Daisy? Like, what's the best place for them to find you at?
Yeah, well, first off, definitely go hit us up on Instagram. I am my default. That's Lincoln. Um, you can definitely send me a message on Instagram. I love chatting on DMs. I will voice memo you 9 times out of 10 because I love chatting. So just hit me up there at the Liberated Latina. You can come hang out with us at the Liberated Latina podcast. And you can download the vocal activation 10-minute warm up, and that'll have you subscribe to our emails so we can catch you up on all things vocal
Mhm.
activation, marketing, growing a global movement, all the things.
Yeah, I love this so much. And I wanted to thank you so much for being here and thanking your mama for being here for all that support and sharing that precious story
Thank
and
you,
sharing
mommy.
about your grandma and just all the things you do for women and helping them really step into their power and creating a safe space too for women of color and Latinas. I think that's so important to be able to have those conversations openly without shame, of like
Mhm.
different experiences because it isn't the same. And people need a safe place to talk about things that are controversial where maybe they don't feel safe enough to talk about it other places, especially in the
Right,
workplace, right? Or business. Um,
right.
and then to all of you watching, thank you so much for joining us on this transformative episode of Into the Light with Sea Love. Remember, no matter where you're at on your journey, there's always a way through. Just take that first step. And in this case, Daisy was saying, write down all those rebuttals and then journal, like get in touch with that voice, right? And embrace your story and know you can turn the pain that you're going through into your strength. And be sure to join us for our next episode with another incredible guest who will share their story of growth and resilience, and you won't want to miss it. And until then, continue to shine your light, live with intention, and keep moving forward on your path to wholeness. And thank you again, Daisy, so much for being our guest today and being so generous with your information, your freebie, everything. I just really appreciate everything you brought to the table today.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for this platform. You're doing an amazing job and you're such a light in this world. So thank you.
Thank you.